were there already naturally, to empower them to support the new ones. All this progressing along to your state of goal. I mean, this is an insanely powerful procedure. Very, very powerful procedure. And then, towards the end, you're sending energy to all of your non-physical helpers and even physical helpers, if that's your choice, to assist you. I mean, this is just an extremely complex and powerful procedure that works exceptionally. And I could spend an entire day giving you the energetic makeup of this thing alone. But instead, I'll let you dwell on it and wait until it gets published. Okay. That is the gist of what I'm going to say about healing at a distance and at other points in time and stuff like that. A lot of extra stuff is in the book. Let's see, how are we doing in time? Let's cover a little bit of what I've written in here regarding the healing space. Chapter 17, page 72, according to the index. We'll see if that's at all right. Chapter 70, or page 70. This is a chapter that I'm actually rather proud of, and I'd like to point it out to you, and I'd like you to take a very good look at it, because I feel that this is something that should be taught in first degree classes and secondary classes if you didn't have the people in first degree. What this takes you through is a complete roadmap for establishing a healing space. From cleansing the space initially, from selecting the space initially, to cleansing it, to environmental things to watch out for, like the light I'm sitting under now, and why? Because of the X-rays pouring off at the ends, because of its light deficient spectrum that produces learning disorders and behavioral problems and all of that. From things like that, on down to a myriad of other tips, things to have on hand. I think that this is just a very nice collection of information. And it's not like I just sat down and wrote this. This has evolved through years of classes and from people saying, well, this is a good thing that I have on hand in my space. This is a good thing so this is a compendium of people's experiences from all across the country, which is very beneficial to review in classes. Other stuff in here, there are some things that I think that, that my guide is relatively weak on. I think it's weak on raking animals and plants and things like that. I've got a lot of basic things in there, but I'm not too much of an animal person, quite honestly. So a lot of my thought wasn't devoted towards that. There are other very good books on animal stuff. The Green Book, the Reiki Handbook, the Big Green Book. That's a very good book on treating animals and things like that. So that information is definitely out there. One thing that I will say, and this is my personal way of doing things, and that is, I usually treat someone in their own space. I've been in Cincinnati for a while, and I haven't been doing that in Cincinnati. I've been doing it in this temple room that I set up. But ordinarily, at home, on the road, whatever, I usually treat people in their own space. And I do that because you're leaving a space, I'm leaving a space behind me very charged with energy. When I mentioned that over my birthday this year that I wound up spending time at that other workshop, I was spending time with a gentleman who wrote a book on African religion and was kind of testing his workshop because he'd been booked in at some pretty big centers where he was going to have to deal with a lot of people. And so I went there with a very close friend of mine. And he wound up having an injured back, and so I spent 4 days there, and all 4 days I worked on different people, but the first day I worked on him. And we did it was at his summer house. It was at his summer compound in Bloomington, Indiana. And so I was working in his bedroom, and he had a community bed with his young children. And he's probably in his 50s, I would imagine, 40s, 50s. But he has young children. He's just now sort of doing the new father thing. Did his industrial businessman thing for a long time. And I just assumed that he would lay down on the spot of the bed where he always slept, and I had him reversed so that his head would be where I could access it so I wasn't butted against a wall or something. And it wasn't. It wound up being where his wife sleeps. And his wife couldn't sleep all night because the bed was so incredibly charged with energy. And her legs were so hot, and all of this, So I treat in a person's space because the residual energy is left behind. Because after I'm gone, the treatment continues. Because it cleans up the person's space that they're in. It certainly affects their health a lot, all the time. And that's just a personal preference with me. But I think it's a good thing to mention. I think it's something that we don't necessarily think about a lot. Regrettably, our job as a healer isn't necessarily our convenience. We're at the convenience of those we feel in terms of, especially when it comes to doing everything possible, to get them better. And I consider that a very important thing to do, to get someone better. So I wanted to bring that. This manual has an amazing amount of information. And, by all means, read it cover to cover and let me know what you think, and you can always send me suggestions. It changes and evolves all the time. That's the reason it's bound like this for the student reference edition, is because we print it up new every time I come up to class. And there are usually changes made in between the last one and the next one. So